The Carter estate stood tall in East Haven, Georgia, a fortress of wealth. Its white brick walls gleamed under the southern sun, and massive windows reflected the quiet skyline. Inside, everything was silent, spotless, and controlled. Julian Carter, 38 years old, owned it all. A self-made real estate mogul, he was respected across Georgia's elite circles. He lived with precision. No distractions, no emotions. Meetings ran like clockwork. Meals were timed. Life was calculated. He barely spoke to anyone outside of business. He didn't entertain guests, didn't waste time. His home was just another piece of the machine he'd built to run perfectly. Naomi Brooks had worked for him for 6 months. She was his maid, and their relationship was entirely transactional. He gave instructions, she followed. That was the rhythm. Every morning, Naomi received a message from him on WhatsApp. Oatmeal. No sugar. 6:45 sharp. Navy suit. Pressed. No starch. She always replied with, "Noted, sir." There was never a good morning, never a smile, never a thank you. Naomi lived in the staff quarters behind the estate. A small room with a single bed, a desk fan, and barely enough space to stretch, but it was quiet. It was hers. At night, when her chores were done and the house fell back into its usual silence, she'd call Tyrone Mitchell, her long-distance boyfriend. He lived in Riverdale, Florida, and worked as a mechanic. Their relationship lived in voice calls and promises. "Hey, beautiful," Tyrone would say. "Still working for the Ice King?" Naomi would chuckle, tired but happy to hear his voice. "He had me mop the same hallway twice today. I swear that man runs on cold batteries." Tyrone would laugh and say, "Just hold on. I'll come get you soon. One day, I'll walk into that fancy house and take you away from all this." Naomi loved him for that, for giving her something soft after the hard days, for reminding her she was still a woman, not just a uniform. During the day, she moved through the mansion like she was part of the walls. She knew which tile creaked, which cabinet needed a push, and how long the microwave beeped before Julian texted, "Turn it off." His orders were always brief. Lunch, 110, no oil. Bathroom, bleach, use gloves. 3-piece suit, ironed by 7:50. Never rude, but never warm. Naomi had never heard him raise his voice, but she'd also never seen him smile. He moved like a ghost with power, always there, never close. She didn't mind. Silence meant safety. Rules meant stability. And Naomi had learned early in life that boundaries kept you out of trouble. But every night she returned to her little room, pulled her feet onto the bed, and waited for her escape. "Naomi, baby girl." Tyrone's voice would beam through the speaker. She'd smile instantly, her body relaxing. "You called late," she'd say. "Had a customer cuss me out 'cause I was late with his engine," he'd reply, laughing. But I told him, "My woman's waiting." They would talk for nearly half an hour, about life, love, and a future far from Julian Carter's mansion. And Naomi would smile. Because in those moments she wasn't just a maid. She was loved. But what Naomi didn't know, what she couldn't have predicted, was that everything was about to change with a single mistake. It was close to midnight when Naomi lay in bed, wrapped in her thin blanket, the ceiling fan spinning lazily above. Her phone buzzed beside her pillow. She smiled, expecting Tyrone. Instead, the screen lit up with a name she never saw this late: Julian Carter. Her heart skipped. She opened the message. "Kitchen. Now. I need food." No punctuation, no greeting. Just a command. Naomi jumped up, slid into her slippers, tied a scarf around her head, and stepped out into the quiet mansion. She wore simple black lounge pants and a white t-shirt. Her footsteps were silent on the marble floor as she moved toward the kitchen. Julian stood at the far counter, arms crossed, staring at nothing in particular. "I skipped dinner," he said, without looking at her. "I need something light, no oil." "Yes, sir," she replied softly, already reaching into the fridge. She suggested boiled plantain and eggs. He gave a single nod. In the silence of the kitchen, she worked quickly. The eggs sizzled gently in the pan and the plantains steamed beside them. Julian didn't say another word. He just scrolled through his phone, standing stiff and unreadable, like always. 15 minutes later, Naomi placed the plate in front of him. "Thank you," he murmured. She froze for half a second. It was the first time he'd ever said that to her. But she didn't linger. She turned and walked out, heart still beating fast. Back in her room, she smiled and dialed Tyrone. It was late, but he'd promised to call. At 1:30 a.m., the screen lit up again. Tyrone Mitchell calling. "You're still awake?" he said with a tired chuckle. "I waited." "Like you said," she whispered, keeping her voice low in the dark room. Only her small lamp lit the space. "You look tired, baby," he said. "But still fine as ever." She laughed shyly. "There's not much sleep in me tonight." "I wish I could hold you," he said softly. "Just hold you." Then, his voice dropped to a lower tone. "You gonna send me something small tonight? Just a little dream?" Naomi hesitated. "Not the full thing," he added quickly. "Just that lace one you wear sometimes. A glimpse, that's all." She laughed nervously, covering her mouth. "Only you'll see it, right?" "Only me. I swear on my life. You know I can't breathe right without you." Her heart softened. Tyrone always had a way with words. "Okay." "Wait," she said. She ended the call briefly, turned off the lamp, and quietly dug through her drawer. She pulled out a soft lace piece, modest, private, something special. She positioned herself carefully, made sure the cloth covered enough, just enough to tease, not to expose. Her hand trembled slightly as she took the photo. Then she tapped WhatsApp. She searched for Tyrone's name. What she didn't realize was that Julian Carter's name was right above his. Her thumb tapped too fast. Message sent. A second later, her heart stopped. Julian Carter, last seen 1:23 a.m., 2 blue ticks. He'd seen it. No, she whispered, hands shaking. She hit delete. Delete for everyone. WhatsApp confirmed. This message was deleted, but it was too late. The blue ticks said everything. She stared at the screen, praying he hadn't looked at it before it vanished. Her phone buzzed again. Tyrone calling. She answered with trembling hands. "You didn't send it again?" he asked, half asleep. I made a mistake," she whispered. "I sent it to someone else." He paused. "Someone else who?" Her voice cracked. "Julian. I sent it to Julian." The silence on the line was long. "You're playing." "I swear, Tyrone, I deleted it, but the blue ticks were there." "Jesus Christ, Naomi." She sat down on the floor, overwhelmed. "I don't even know what to do." "Has he said anything?" "No. Nothing. Not a single message." "Maybe he'll ignore it," Tyrone said, voice low. "Just act normal. Don't bring it up. Don't go to him. Pretend like it never happened." Naomi didn't sleep that night. Her eyes stayed wide open, staring into the dark. At 5:30 a.m., her alarm buzzed. She pulled on her uniform with shaking hands and walked to the kitchen to prepare his oats and ginger tea. When she placed the tray outside his study, she didn't knock. She just stood there listening. Inside, Julian moved around. But he said nothing. No message, no question, no word, only silence. And in that silence, Naomi felt something dangerous begin to stir, something that couldn't be undone. It was 11:46 p.m. Naomi moved quietly through the kitchen, barefoot. The light above the stove cast a soft glow across the room, catching the warmth of her brown skin. A pot of jollof rice simmered gently. The aroma of tomatoes, curry, and thyme filled the air. Julian had called her 10 minutes earlier. His voice had been calm, same as always. "Naomi, I need food. I haven't eaten all day." "Yes, sir," she had replied. Her hands still trembled from everything that hadn't been said since the night before. No mention of the picture. No hesitation in his voice. Just a request, like any other day. But it wasn't any other day. The dining table sat just beyond the kitchen, half covered in shadow. Julian was there now, seated with his laptop open. His fingers tapped across the keyboard, the sound blending with the bubbling pot on the stove. Naomi sliced plantains, trying to stay focused, but she could feel his eyes on her. She turned to grab a plate and caught him watching. His gaze shifted instantly back to the screen, but it had happened. He was looking at her, watching. She arranged the meal: jollof rice, golden fried plantains, a grilled chicken thigh, and a bottle of cold water. Everything neat, just the way he liked it. "Your food is ready, sir," she said softly, walking it over to him. He looked up, nodded once, and went back to typing. Naomi placed the plate in front of him carefully. "Thank you, sir." He didn't look at her this time, but as she turned to return to the kitchen, his eyes followed her. Quiet, steady, unreadable. Back in her room, Naomi curled under the blanket, but sleep refused to come. Her phone buzzed. A message from Tyrone? No. It was silent. She stared at the ceiling. The image of Julian's gaze burned into her mind. Somewhere in the mansion, Julian sat alone in the dark, laptop still glowing in front of him, but his mind wasn't on work. It hadn't been all day. He poured a glass of water but didn't drink it. Instead, his thoughts drifted to that image, the one Naomi had sent by mistake. It had been on his screen for barely 2 seconds before she deleted it. But that was enough. It wasn't explicit. It wasn't loud. It was delicate, private. And now, it lived in his memory. Naomi, the quiet one, the invisible one, the one who never raised her voice or asked for anything. She had taken root in his mind. He leaned back, in his chair, jaw clenched, frustrated at himself. He knew it wasn't meant for him. Her reaction the next morning, the panic in her eyes, confirmed it. But none of that changed what had happened. He'd seen her, and she was beautiful. He tried, reading, couldn't focus. Tried drinking, didn't help. Tried sleeping. But when his eyes closed, she appeared, standing at the foot of his bed in that same soft lace. Hands folded behind her back, eyes lowered, silent and unassuming. He turned restlessly. This wasn't lust, not entirely. It was something else. A spark he didn't ask for, but now couldn't ignore. At 4:12 a.m., Julian sat up, drenched in sweat. He pressed his palms to his face, breathing hard. Something had shifted, and nothing was going to be the same. Morning light streamed through the narrow window of Naomi's room. She sat on the edge of her bed, the phone pressed to her ear. The screen read, "Tyrone Mitchell calling." He picked up on the third ring. "Hello." His voice was flat, cold. Naomi swallowed hard. "Hey, it's me." There was silence. "I just wanted to talk," she said gently. "You've been distant ever since." Tyrone cut her off. "Ever since the picture?" She hesitated. "I told you it was a mistake. I meant to send it to you. I tried to delete it." "I heard you the first time," he replied, voice clipped. "I've just been busy." Busy. That word again. She'd heard it too often now. It wasn't about work anymore. It was about the distance growing between them. "I miss how we used to talk," she said quietly. "Before all this. Before things got weird." There was no answer. "I have to go," he muttered, then ended the call. The screen went dark. No goodbye. No warmth. Just silence. Naomi stared at the phone, her heart sinking. Her hands trembled as she placed it back on the nightstand. Downstairs, the day moved like every other. She ironed Julian's suit, dark gray, crisp, no wrinkles. It was for an important board meeting. She made sure it was flawless. At 7:15, she waited near the bedroom door, holding the hanger. Julian stepped out of the bathroom, a towel wrapped around his waist, water still glistening on his skin. "Your suit, sir," she said, offering it to him. He reached for it, and for the first time their hands brushed. Julian paused, his eyes meeting hers, not in passing, not by accident. He looked directly at her. "Are you okay?" Naomi blinked. It was such a simple question. But coming from him, it felt foreign, almost unbelievable. "What?" she whispered. "You seem off," he said. "Since yesterday. You haven't been yourself." She stared at him, speechless. He noticed. "I'm just tired," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Julian nodded slowly. "Then rest." She blinked again, unsure if she heard him right. "Sir, are you talking to me?" He raised an eyebrow like the question was strange. "Of course, who else is here?" She opened her mouth but didn't know what to say. His tone wasn't cold. It wasn't exactly warm either. But it was human. "Yes, sir. I'll rest after breakfast is served." He was already buttoning his shirt. Now that's an instruction. The room felt too small, too quiet. Naomi turned and left, her heart racing. Back in her room, she sat by the window, sunlight warming her face. She was confused. Julian Carter, Mr. Rules and Silence, had asked her if she was okay. Was that really him? Was she imagining it? Her phone buzzed. A message from Tyrone. "Hope you're good." No baby, no heart, no emoji, just words. Dry and distant. Naomi stared at the screen, thumb hovering over the keyboard. Then she turned the phone off and laid back, eyes on the ceiling. Her heart felt like it was torn between two worlds, and neither of them felt like home anymore. Golden morning. Light spilled into the living room, casting soft beams across the polished floor. Julian stood near the window, dressed sharply in his navy blue suit. He looked composed on the outside, but inside he was distracted. Naomi had handed him the suit earlier. As always, it was perfectly pressed. She'd barely spoken, but her eyes told a different story. They were tired, dim, missing the quiet fire he'd come to expect in her, and that bothered him more than it should have. The day passed in a blur. Meetings, contracts, phone calls. But Julian's mind wasn't on business, it was on Naomi. He kept seeing her face, the hesitation in her voice, the way she had asked, "Sir, are you talking to me?" As if she truly didn't believe she mattered. At noon, he leaned back in his chair, removed his glasses and rubbed his eyes. Then, without thinking too much about it, he picked up his phone and dialed her number. Naomi was sitting on her bed, still in her room, when the call came in. She stared at the screen, shocked. Julian Carter calling. He had never called her. Not once. She answered. "Hello, sir?" Julian's voice was quiet, steady. "Are you okay?" There was a pause. "Yes, sir," she replied, her voice careful. "Just resting, like you said." "Good," he said simply. Then the line went silent. Naomi sat holding the phone long after the call ended. Her heart was racing. Julian Carter, the man who never said more than 3 words, had just called to check on her. That evening, as the sun dipped below the rooftops, Julian's SUV pulled into the driveway. The engine hummed softly before it stopped. But instead of waiting for his driver to open the door, Julian stepped out himself. In one hand, he carried a sleek black bag. In the other, a food tray. Naomi opened the door, confused. "Good evening, sir." Julian gave a small smile, faint but real. "I brought you something." He handed her the bag. She took it slowly, their fingers brushing again. Inside, she found a small bottle of luxury perfume and a lavender-scented bar of soap. They were from a high-end store in Atlanta. "I noticed you looked tired," Julian said, "and I assumed you didn't cook tonight." She nodded slightly, still surprised. "No, sir, I didn't." "Good. I brought food. Let's eat together." Naomi's breath caught in her chest. She had never sat at that dining table, not with him, not as an equal. She always served, then disappeared. I'll set the table," she offered. "No need. Let's just sit." It's not formal. They sat across from each other at the modest table near the window. The air conditioning whispered softly, and the house for once didn't feel cold. The food was simple: jollof rice, fried plantains, grilled chicken, a takeout from a popular restaurant in the city. Naomi served him, then herself, her movements, quiet and graceful. Julian watched her. Her uniform clung modestly to her figure. Her ponytail swayed slightly as she moved. He found himself looking too long and then quickly looking away. "How was your rest?" he asked, taking a sip of water. Naomi looked up, startled. "It was good, sir. Thank you." He nodded, his gaze lingering. "You didn't have to buy anything," she said softly. "I wanted to," he replied. She glanced up at him, unsure what to make of this new side of her boss. And there they sat, two people who had once lived behind walls, now sharing a meal in silence. But this silence was different. It wasn't cold, it was full of curiosity, full of unspoken things. Naomi glanced at him again, wondering what had changed. Julian sat back, watching her as if he was trying to solve a puzzle. One he hadn't, realized he wanted to understand. The dining room was dimly lit, the soft glow from the overhead lamp casting warm shadows across the table. Naomi sat with her hands folded in her lap, occasionally glancing at the man across from her. Mr. Julian Carter was leaning back slightly, his gaze fixed on her, but not with judgment. It was more like curiosity. He took a sip of water, then set the glass down gently. "Naomi," he said, his voice calm, "do you have a boyfriend?" The question landed like a stone dropped in still water. Naomi's eyes widened slightly. She wasn't expecting anything personal, especially not from him. I used to," she answered softly, dropping her gaze for a moment. "His name is Tyrone. He's a mechanic." Julian nodded slowly, taking in the answer. "Used to?" Naomi let out a faint sigh. "It's complicated. We haven't officially ended things, but he's been distant, cold, ever since the photo." Julian tilted his head. "That's why you've seemed off," he said gently. "It's been bothering you." She hesitated before nodding. "Yes, sir. I tried reaching out. But when he responds, it's like I'm talking to a stranger." Julian leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "Forgive me for being direct. But is this about the picture?" Naomi froze. Her heart jumped. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached for her glass, trying to cover the nervous twitch in her fingers. You saw it?" she asked quietly. "I did," Julian said, his voice steady. "Though I figured it wasn't meant for me." Naomi lowered her gaze. Shame washing over her face, her cheeks grew warm. "I'm so sorry, sir," she whispered. "It was never supposed to happen. I meant to send it to someone else. I deleted it as fast as I could." Julian lifted a hand, gently stopping her from saying more. "It's okay, Naomi, really. We all make mistakes." She looked up, meeting, his eyes unsure of what he was thinking. "It wasn't too revealing," he added with a softer tone. "But I won't lie. You have a beautiful body. You really do." Naomi's lips parted slightly. She didn't know whether to smile or hide. "Thank you, sir," she whispered. Julian leaned back again, letting a brief silence pass between them before breaking it. "You don't always have to be so formal with me," he said. "You can talk to me, like a person, like a friend." Naomi tilted her head, still unsure what to make of this sudden shift. Is it because of what you saw?" Julian chuckled quietly, not in mockery, just amused by her directness. "No," he said, shaking his head. "That has nothing to do with it. I just think it's not a bad thing for people who live under the same roof to form a connection, especially when one of them is clearly going through something." Naomi's gaze softened. She'd never seen this version of him, never heard this tone. Julian Carter, calm, warm, even a little vulnerable. "You're different today," she said, almost in disbelief. He smiled faintly. "Am I?" She nodded. more approachable. Julian looked at her for a long moment. His voice was quiet, reflective. Maybe it's because I've started seeing you as more than just my maid. Naomi didn't move. Her breath caught in her chest. You're a person, Naomi. You feel things. You carry burdens. And sometimes you just need someone to ask if you're okay. Tears didn't come. But the gratitude in her eyes spoke louder than words. Thank you for asking, she said softly. No one ever does. He nodded. Then, with a light smile, he gestured to her half-eaten plate. Eat. I brought all this because I knew you hadn't cooked. Naomi laughed gently. You noticed? I noticed more than I let on, he said with a smirk. For the first time in weeks, she smiled without force. The tension in her shoulders faded. They began talking about music, about food, about silly childhood memories, and slowly the heavy fog between them began to lift. In that quiet dining room beneath soft lighting and soft laughter, two strangers began to feel like something more. Not boss and maid, just two souls, finally seen. Later that night, Naomi sat on her bed, still in her uniform, her phone clutched tightly in her hands. Her heart was a storm of questions and emotions. She needed closure. She tapped Tyrone's contact and called. It rang once, then twice. Finally, he answered. Hello. His voice was flat, cold. Hi. It's me. Naomi began softly. Another pause. What do you want, Naomi? He asked sharply. I feel like we haven't really talked since it happened. I wanted to explain. Tyrone didn't let her finish. I asked you for a picture, you never sent it. Then out of nowhere your boss gets one. And now what? You two are having dinner? Bonding behind my back? Naomi's heart thudded. It wasn't like that. I didn't mean to send it to him. It was a mistake. I tried to delete it. I don't buy it, he snapped. You expect me to believe that? His voice was heavy with bitterness. I just want to fix this, she said, voice trembling. I can send the photo again to you, explain everything. Just give me a chance. I'm done, Naomi. His words landed like a blade. I can't be with a woman whose boss has seen her body. He's there every day. I'm not. I can't. Trust that. Tyrone, please. Goodbye. The call ended. Naomi sat frozen, phone still in her hand, her body trembling. Slowly, she placed the phone down, wrapped her arms around her knees, and let the tears fall. She didn't sob loudly. It came in quiet, painful waves. Minutes passed, then a knock on her door. Soft. Careful. Naomi? Julian's voice, low and calm. Are you okay? She didn't answer. The door opened gently. He stepped inside, saw her curled on the bed, and, without a word, walked over and sat beside her. He didn't ask anything, he simply placed a comforting hand on her back. When she looked at him, tear-streaked and fragile, he opened his arms. She didn't hesitate. She fell into him, letting her, tears soak into his shirt, her breath uneven against his chest. He ended it, she whispered. He said he doesn't want me. Because of the picture, because you saw it. Julian held her tighter. I tried to explain, but he wouldn't listen. He thinks I wanted you to notice me. Julian let out a slow breath. I'm so sorry, he said. People jump to conclusions when they're angry, when they're insecure. Naomi leaned into him. The silence between them wasn't awkward. It was needed. Then Julian spoke again. You know, it happened to me too. She looked up slightly. My girlfriend left me, he continued. Back when everything was falling apart, I lost my job. My dad was sick. I had nothing. I needed someone to stand by me. She left. Naomi's eyes softened. I'm so sorry. He gave a sad smile. It changed me. I stopped trusting people. I stopped letting anyone get close. I started building this life alone. She reached for his arm gently. You don't have to be alone anymore. Julian met her gaze. Maybe two broken people can help each other heal. Naomi stared at him. Are you saying, I've been seeing you, Naomi. How hard you work, how much you care. You're beautiful, inside and out. I'd like to get to know you. Properly. Start. Slow, no pressure. She stayed quiet for a moment, letting his words settle. Really? You want me? Even like this? He didn't hesitate. Exactly like this, because I'm broken too. Naomi smiled. A real tear-soaked, fragile smile. Okay, she whispered. Let's try. In that quiet room, two damaged hearts made a silent promise to heal together. Morning sunlight filtered gently through the wide windows of the Carter estate. It cast golden beams across the marble floors, touching everything with a quiet warmth. In her room, Naomi stood in front of a small mirror, holding her gray Maid uniform. It felt different now, like something she no longer belonged to. She folded it carefully and tucked it into a drawer. Today, she wore a simple floral dress, soft fabric, comfortable. One of the gifts Julian had surprised her with. Barefoot, she walked through the house with a new kind of ease. Her sleek ponytail swayed behind her as she entered the kitchen. Julian was already there. He stood at the stove, humming to himself while stirring a pot of egusi soup. The aroma filled the house, rich, savory, warm. Naomi peeked in, amused. You cook better than I do, she said with a laugh. Julian turned, smiling. I had to learn. When you live alone as long as I have, it's either that or starve. She stepped closer, watching him move with quiet confidence. His tall frame, low-cut hair, and neatly trimmed beard made him look like a man from a magazine. But it wasn't just his looks. It was the way he looked at her, like she mattered. They ate breakfast together at the table, nothing fancy. Just warmth, conversation, and laughter. Afterward, Julian leaned back on the couch and patted the spot next to him. Come sit. I've been thinking. Naomi sat beside him, curious. You have so much potential, he said. You shouldn't be limited to housework. Would you consider learning a skill? Maybe even going back to school? She blinked. No one had ever asked her that. No one had ever believed she could do more. I've never had that kind of opportunity before. Julian's tone was firm but kind. You deserve it. I want to help you grow, to feel confident, independent. Naomi stared at him, heart-pounding. Don't you want kids? Most men would have said, give me children, not go chase your dream. Julian chuckled. That will come when it's time. Right now, I want to build something solid with you, a life where you don't have to depend on anyone. I want to know that if I fall, you'll be able to carry us. He took her hand. I want a rich wife, strong, smart, and successful, not just someone in the background. Tears welled up in Naomi's eyes. No one has ever said that to me. All I've ever heard is, be quiet, cook, clean, have children. You're worth more than that, he said. I don't want to walk ahead of you. I want to walk beside you. A week later, Naomi enrolled in a 6-month online course in fashion design. Every evening after finishing her chores, she sat at the dining table with her laptop, sketching ideas and studying patterns. Julian would sit across from her sipping wine, watching her with quiet pride. One night, she turned her sketchpad toward him. What do you think? Julian leaned in. It's beautiful. You've got a real eye for it. I can already see your name on a boutique sign in Brooklyn. They laughed together. Real laughter. The kind that came from knowing someone had your back. Some nights they danced in the living room to old-school R&B. Other times they sat on the porch, watching stars and talking about dreams. Julian always made time for her, always asked how her day went, brought her small gifts, a sketchbook, a pair of shoes for her classes, a gold-plated pen engraved with her name. You're nothing like I imagined, Naomi said one night. What did you imagine? He asked, amused. Arrogant, cold, unreachable. He laughed softly. You bring out the rest of me, the better part. Their love grew slowly, deeply, beautifully. Naomi was no longer the silent maid walking on eggshells. She was a woman now, strong, seen, and loved. And Julian? He wasn't just her boss anymore. He was her partner, her peace, her home. Years passed, almost like a dream. Naomi Brooks was no longer the quiet maid in a gray uniform. She had transformed into a confident, elegant woman, founder and CEO of her own fashion brand. Her designs, born from late-night sketches at Julian's table, now appeared on red carpets and in fashion magazines. Celebrities wore her clothes. Socialites quoted her name. She wasn't just successful, she was respected. Julian, too, had expanded his empire. His name became a staple in the real estate world, not just in Georgia, but nationwide. But at home, he remained the same man Naomi had fallen in love with. Gentle, present, supportive. They still shared small things. He cooked for her after long days. She brought him coffee when he worked late. They laughed, danced, talked about everything. One quiet evening, they sat in the living room, her legs curled under her on the couch. Julian leaned in, arm around her shoulders. "So," he said, smiling, "now that you're officially richer than me, can we finally talk about babies?" Naomi burst out laughing. "Now we can try," she said, placing a hand over his. "You always said you wanted a rich wife first. And now you've got one." Julian kissed her forehead gently. "And the most beautiful one, too." A few weeks later, they flew to Brooklyn for Naomi's latest fashion showcase. It was a huge event. Press, photographers, buyers from all over the country. After the show, as they prepared to leave the venue, their car stalled unexpectedly in the lot. Julian pulled out his phone. "I'll call a mechanic. Shouldn't take long." 15 minutes later, a man in grease-stained overalls approached. Naomi looked up and froze. It was Tyrone. He stopped in his tracks when he saw her. She stood tall in a custom-fit blazer and heels, every inch a woman in charge. His eyes widened. "Naomi," he said, voice unsure. "Wow, you look different." She gave him a polite smile. "It's been a while." Tyrone looked her over, confused, impressed. "You've really grown. What happened to you?" Before she could answer, Julian stepped out of the car and walked toward them. Tyrone's expression shifted. He looked from Julian to Naomi, then back again. Naomi's voice stayed calm. "Even. You remember Julian Carter, right? The man you said I sent that picture to on purpose? The one you accused me of trying to seduce?" Tyrone's mouth moved, but no words came out. "Well," she continued, "he's my husband now. We live in Brooklyn. We own several businesses, and we're expecting our first child." Tyrone's shoulders dropped. The tough edge in his stance dissolved into regret. "You married him?" he asked, almost whispering. "You're having a baby?" Naomi nodded. "Yes. The man who chose to believe in me, support me, love me, even when I was broken." Tyrone looked down at the ground. "I was wrong." Julian stepped forward, wrapping an arm around Naomi. His voice was calm, steady. "Thanks for fixing the car." Tyrone nodded slowly, eyes filled with things he couldn't say. Then he turned back to his tools. As the engine roared back to life, Julian and Naomi stepped into the back seat. Naomi looked out the window, watching Tyrone shrink in the distance. "You okay?" Julian asked, gently holding her hand. She nodded, breathing deep. "That was closure. I needed that." Julian looked at her with pride. "You deserve everything good in this world, Naomi, and I'm proud of the woman you've become." She turned to him, her smile soft. "And I'm proud of the man who saw me, when I was invisible." The car pulled away, the city lights flickering. Behind them, ahead was a future filled with love, laughter, and soon, the sound of tiny feet running across the floors of their home.